Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome to a video I've been talking up for ages. It's a head-to-head comparison between three Japanese heavyweight dive watches, though technically perhaps one of them is more a middleweight. Seiko versus Citizen versus Orient. The idea first came to me after I reviewed the Orient Star Diver. That one was sent to me by JOMASHOP. I then purchased the Seiko King Samurai and the Citizen FUGU, with a view to making this video. We all know they're great brands, we all know they make great dive watches. Which one makes the best? Let's flip the camera and find out. Okay, let's introduce the scoring system first of all before introducing today's contenders. I'm sure you've seen this here or elsewhere by now. 10 categories, 2 of them double weighted, those being price and movement both up at the top. That gives a total score of 120, a maximum of 120, which I'm then going to tot up at the bottom and also give you a percentage so you can see how the three of them compare to each other. Pretty straightforward. I tried to keep this as objective as possible. It's all kind of material categories. There's a little bit of subjectivity in dial and hands and brand down the bottom. Now, occasionally I double weight brand. Today I'm not going to. I figure if you're up for one Japanese watch, you're up for all of these Japanese watches. But there is small differences between them, I think, so that's why I've still included it. That's the scoring system then. Let's look at the contenders, starting with the Seiko. This is the Seiko SRPE 35K1, aka the King Samurai. These were launched just over 12 months ago. They call this one King because it has the added bonuses, the luxuries in Seiko world anyway, of sapphire crystal and a ceramic bezel insert. They call it a Samurai because of that angular case and the distinctive hour hand, which does look a little bit like a sword if you've had a couple of beverages anyway. The Big Sam is just over 43mm in diameter, 13.3mm thick, 48 lug to lug, 22mm lug widths, and comes in at a not inconsiderable 190 grams when sized up for my 7-inch wrist. Next contender is the Citizen NY0130, aka the FUGU, named after the deadly Japanese puffer fish. The puffer fish features on the case back. I'll show you that a bit later on. Now this one is slightly bigger than the Seiko, coming in at 43.7 diameter, but it is slimmer at 13mm, 50mm lug to lug, 20mm lug width, and the lightest of the three by some margin at 161 grams, so do bear that in mind if weight is a major factor for you. The third watch, and arguably the most glamorous of the three, certainly in dashing green and gold, is the Orient RE something, aka the Orient Star Diver. Another 43mm diameter watch, the thickest of the bunch but not by much at 13.6, 50mm lug to lug again, 22mm lug width, and almost matching the Seiko in terms of grams, coming in at 191. Alright then, let battle commence, and let battle commence with the first of the double weighted categories, that being price, because as you know, price is all important on this channel. Double weighted, the Seiko scores an 8, which is 16, the Citizen a 9, which is 18, it's the cheapest watch here, the Orient 6.5, I don't normally give halves, but I can because I'm doubling it to 13. Now to make this fair, I searched for all three of these watches on ebay.com. The cheapest price I could find for the Seiko was $380. I think that is pretty good for the specs on offer, for the brand on offer, which is why I'm giving it 8 out of 10. The Citizen, however, gets a 9 because it comes in 10% cheaper than the Seiko at $345. Again, all of these three watches were chosen because the specs are broadly similar, it's not just the sizes. Now the Orient gets the lowest score, a 6.5, because wherever you look, it's the most expensive of the three. Cheapest price I could find on eBay for any of the colours, I've applied that to all of these watches, any colour I could find, the cheaper the better, was $480. However, JOMASHOP, that's who sent me this one in the first place, $440. That's still only enough for a 6.5, doubled to 13 though. So the Citizen takes an early lead today thanks to its bargain basement price tag. Moving on to the next category, no pun intended, which is movement. If you're buying something as antiquated as an automatic watch these days, the movement is rather important, I think, hence why I have double weighted the category. Citizen unfortunately loses its early lead by having a bit of a shocker in the back, 4 double weighted to 8. Seiko, solid 7 doubled to 14, but the Orient takes this one out with a 9 doubled to 18. I'm sure you've all seen hundreds of these by now. It's the Seiko 4R35 movement, aka the NH35 when it doesn't feature in the back of a Seiko. 24 dual hacking and hand winding, bi-directional winding automatic with a 42-hour power reserve. All three of these movements vibrate at 3 Hz, 21,600 vibrations per hour, so 6 ticks of the second hand per second. The 4R35 is a solid, if unspectacular choice for a watch coming in at just under $400. It gets a 7. which is a lot more than the Citizen gets. It only gets a 4. The Miyota 8204 in the back of the Citizen, in my opinion, is one rung below the Seiko 4R movements. Out of date, they've been making these for about 20 years, I believe. It only winds in one direction, meaning that rotor spins and spins and spins. You can both hear and feel that on your wrist under most circumstances. Roughly 40-hour power reserve as well, 21 joule, and a fairly loose window of operation of plus 40 to minus 20 seconds per day. Citizen, you own Miyota, you make the 9000. Give us a 9000 next time, would you? Which leaves the Orient getting the big points today thanks to its F6N47, a movement I don't know a whole lot about, I admit. Tolerances, however, are significantly better than the other two, coming in at plus 25 to minus 15 seconds per day. This one has a 50-hour power reserve as well. If the Miyota 8000 was one rung below the Seiko 4R, this Orient F6 is one rung above it. Next up, it's a bit of a non-category if I'm being honest. It's crystal. All three watches feature flat sapphire crystals. All three watches therefore score 8 out of 10 each. Moving on to a category describing the case finish and overall standard of build quality. And you know what? There's not an awful lot between them. No enormous standouts. Seiko gets a 7, Citizen gets a 6, Orient gets a 7. These are all proper dive watches, and these are all dive watches built to a proper budget, so you wouldn't necessarily expect radical case finishing, chamfered edges here and there, and mixed brush and polish, which is just as well because you're not getting them. Samurai's pretty good though, nice angled case, consistency of brushing, a fantastic knurled crown, and drilled lugs. 7 out of 10. Now the Citizen is the only lefty of the three. The crown is down at the 8 o'clock rather than the 4 o'clock. Doesn't make a huge difference to the way the watch wears or their overall utility. You're not going to get the crown digging into your arm, but it is a little more awkward to use. I do like the way it's finished though. Nice high polished sides, no sharp edges anywhere, and it's a good knurled crown again with the ProMaster logo on there this time, but it loses a point because it doesn't have drilled lugs. A feature that, like the Seiko, can also be found on the Orient. Nice unguarded vintage style crown on this Orient Star with the Star S logo. Consistency of brushing and a nice little high polish undercut, meaning it wears comfortably also. Now these are all ISO rated dive watches, meaning they're more than capable of getting wet at the weekend. That also means that they all have 120 click unidirectional rotating dive time bezels, but there are differences between them. I'm going to give the Seiko a rather strong 9 for this category. Citizen somewhere in the middle with 7. The Orient's the loser here, it only gets a 6. One of the things that makes a king is the ceramic bezel insert, and I think it just gives the whole Samurai design a real lift. Now what have we got here? We have a knurled bezel, nice and easy to grip. The Samurai though, you're really gripping it north and south because of the way that the case is shaped. Typical Seiko, notchety, ratchety, but rather satisfying and rather stiff, which is really what you want if you are taking this one out at the weekend to time a dive. No backplay, no bounce, very nice, very strong, 9 out of 10. The Citizen takes a slightly different approach to the others with this kind of bead blasted effect and only these indentations at various points. Still pretty good to grip though, and yeah, feels very nice. Sounds good too. Only an aluminium insert though, and there is just a little bit of back play with this one. It's not too bad, at least it all lines up nicely. 7 out of 10. Now the Orient has a coin edge bezel, so 3 different watches, 3 different bezel styles here. Aluminium insert with loom pit, the loom is to come, but this one, oh, definitely the weakest component of this watch I think is the bezel action. Doesn't feel particularly good, and there is a bit of back play. 6 out of 10. Onto the dial and hands, the area where I said there was a degree of subjectivity. This is my own thoughts about both the quality and also the way these 3 watches look. If you don't agree with me, don't get mad, just leave me an angry comment instead. How does that sound? I'm going to give this one also to the Seiko, 9 out of 10, Citizen 6 out of 10, Orient runs the Seiko pretty close with an 8 though. The Seiko really does tick a lot of boxes. That is an applied logo, there are applied indices, lovely brushed handset, touch of gold there on the second hand as well, Cyclops above the date complication, I actually think it suits this watch, and of course how could I not point out that checkerboard deep etched look to the whole dial. Printing's crisp, and I think the gold on the second hand really does give the whole thing a lift. Everything's big, everything's legible, overall very strong, 9 out of 10. The Citizen looks pretty ordinary by comparison I think. Those indices are embossed, they're all quite angular, They're not very attractive. The brand name is just printed on. It does have a day date complication, which is something that neither of the other two watches have, but the handset is pretty dull. They're flat, they're high polished. The only sign of life on this entire dial is that little red tip to the second hand. It is perfectly legible though, perfectly functional, but perfectly mediocre, 6 out of 10. Now the Orient clearly is doing something a little bit different to the other two. It's not as tooly. I think it's a little bit classier, which is why it scores a rather strong 8. Plus it has a complication. One reason why the movement got a 9 out of 10 is because of that power reserve meter up there at 12. Indices are applied. They look really good with that matte gold finish to them, matching the matte gold handset. Now I know that some people are slightly irked by the big counterbalances and the rather odd skeletonization of the hour hand and the minute hand. Overall I quite like it though, and I like the strong sunburst effect as well on this one. 8 out of 10 from me. Bracelet and clasp, all three of these watches supplied on bracelets. There are rubber strapped alternatives within their respective ranges, but I went for all bracelets. A bracelet and clasp can really make or break a watch, but you know that we're one step closer to the end of the world when Seiko is winning for a bracelet comparison. 7 out of 10. Citizen, what's gone on for? Orient, somewhere in between with a 6. The Samurai's bracelet may not technically be all that amazing. I mean, those are single links masquerading as an oyster style 3-link, and there is a significant amount of N-link rattle, shall we say, but there is a little bit of decoration, which is what gets it the extra point over the Orient. Pin and collar system, all three have the same pin and collar system, fairly cheap press clasp, but it just kind of works. Diver's extension there, 4 holes of micro adjust, everything's nice and comfortable, and solid end links. 7 out of 10. Citizen, what were you doing? What were you thinking? What prompted you to put that clasp on this watch? 2 holes of micro adjust, no Diver's extension. This belongs on a cheap Citizen dress watch, office watch, daily driver. It does not belong on a dive watch. No Diver's extension, no micro adjust. Good luck getting comfortable on this one. 4 out of 10. The Orient bracelet and clasp are very, very similar to the ones on the Samurai. Female end links as opposed to male end links. Very similar clasp, Diver's extension, 4 holes of micro adjust. It's cheap, it's press, but it's effective. The only reason that this one scores 1 point less is because it is just plain brushed. They haven't added any extra highlights to it. No polished areas. 6 out of 10. Much like the crystal, the water resistance category is not going to take long. All three of them are ISO rated to 200 meters. All three therefore score an 8. There are, however, significant differences when it comes to the loom. Now you would expect a strong performance from the Seiko, and you get one, but you get an even better performance from the Orient. Once again, the Citizen lagging behind. Initially, all three of them look really good. You won't be disappointed there. The disappointment comes, at least from the Citizen anyway, when you get past about 10 minutes. As we approach the end of my test period, 20 minutes, which I always think is about 4 to 5 hours of human eye, the fact that the Citizen only has embossed indices rather than applied is really showing up. Patchy, not very good, 5 out of 10. Seiko's okay, but look at that Orient, still glowing very brightly indeed, 9. Which brings us on to the final category today, brand. Now I often double weight brand. Today I'm only going to single weight it because I don't think there's that much of a difference between the three, all being Japanese brands with plenty of history, plenty of fabulous models in their back catalogue, plenty of nice stories if that's your thing. However, I still think Seiko just outpoints the other two. 9 out of 10. Seiko dive watches under $500 are so strong, and they have been for decades. Citizen pretty good, Orient pretty good, but not quite up there. They both get 7 each. So then, where does that all leave us? Drum roll please. I think it's pretty clear to see just by glancing at those columns that the Citizen is not going to win today. It's also going to be pretty close between the Seiko and the Orient. And indeed it is, but the Seiko takes it out. 94 out of 120, giving a score of 78%. The Orient runs it close, 90 out of 120, a score of 75%. The Citizen lagging behind today, badly, 77 out of 120, 64%. What scuppered the Citizen then? Well, clearly that clasp is not fantastic. The loom also not great, and the 8000 series movement. Yeah, the Citizen unfortunately was a bit of a disappointment to me. I was expecting more of it when I bought it given its reputation, but a few decisions that were made with this one that I just can't agree with, and there are better watches at the price, as has just been demonstrated. The Orient is a very strong offering. You're paying a little bit more for it, but you're definitely getting the best movement here, especially if you're into that power meter on the dial. Best lume and no real weaknesses anywhere else. Personally, I like the looks on this one a lot. I think it looks a little bit classier than the other two. Imagine how good it would look if they had put a ceramic bezel insert in there instead. If this one speaks to you, buy with confidence. It's a very solid piece all round. But the Seiko King Samurai is today's worthy winner. So strong across the board, well priced, no real weaknesses, reliable movement, decent lume, attractive dial and handset, and the addition of sapphire and the ceramic bezel insert over the regular Samurai really takes this one up a notch. Plus, it's a Seiko. The only problem is it pretty much kills off the regular Samurai dead. Why would you bother with one of those when you can have one of these for only a few bucks extra? So there you have it. Well done, you made it all the way to the back end of a whopping video. 3 Japanese dive watches, 2 I recommend, 1 I don't. Why not check out the reviews of the 2 that I do recommend, the King Samurai or the Orient Star Diver. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.